So I've got Corinne. Great, Corinne. We'll pull you on. And then we'll do it with Mallory as well, because I know Mallory's projects. So let me find y'all. So Shannon, keep up with that cute for me, please. Corinne, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Do you pronounce your name Corinne or Corrine?
Corinne. Rhymes with
Corinne.
queen.
Alrighty. Alrighty, Corinne. Thanks for being a guinea kitty. I don't like guinea pigs, right? So you're going to be a guinea kitty. Well, not that I mind pigs. I actually really love pigs, but I don't like calling people pigs. Okay, so give me an idea of a annual goal that you're working on.
To develop a viable business model for my brother's business.
Okay, so the goal is to develop a viable biz model.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be clear,
And the challenge with that is that he barely has a company. We have an IP, and that's it. So, I mean, that's a big goal. That's not a small one. As small as it looks, it's not small.
so yeah, I didn't talk about SMART goals because I didn't want to go too long today, but that's what I would be thinking about on this particular goal. Is it the goal just to get the business model itself, but no customers, nothing else set up, or is it actually to have the business up?
Viable business. Like, if we are set up and we're ready to get customers, that's okay. We would obviously like to be earning income by the end of the year.
Okay.
But if it takes longer than that, that's okay, as long as that's the path we're on.
Okay, so let's do a little bit of time adjusting real quick, just because it's easier to do this. Imagine that we're sort of at the end of December, so we can say for a full year that way. Okay, so just play with me, and then let's forecast a year from then and say at the end of 2017, if we were starting that way, where would you want, like, what does that look like?
Ideal world or realistic?
Let's go ideal first.
I'd like my brother to have a sufficient salary that he can quit his current job.
Okay.
So I'd like to be enough to be able to pay him $100,000 a year.
Okay. So, so what we really be looking at is reaching 100K owner pay by end of year 2017. Right?
Yes.
That's if we were going ideal. Now, what's more realistic, you said?
Probably to have a concrete enough product that somebody could invest in the company.
Alrighty. So,
So concrete product, which will require development.
okay, so develop a concrete investable project.
Yes.
Now, in another webinar / course thing, I'll work through how to do goals and how to get them right, but I just want to get some stuff on the board for today.
I take it I don't have them right yet, huh?
No, I'm not saying that. I teach a lot on this, but I realize that time is limited on today's webinar, so if I talk just about goals and making goals that work, we would stretch it, right? So bear with me on that one. Alrighty, so let's look at it this way. That's the goal, develop a concrete product that
Investable product.
Investor ready.
Mm-hmm.
Now notice that you're not saying that you have an investor. That would be great, but that's not where you're at yet. Okay, so we're starting point where he just has IP, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, so tangible product or intangible?
Tangible.
Tangible. Okay, so,
Yeah,
so we're starting to talk about prototyping and such.
Pardon me?
We're starting to talk about prototyping and things like that.
Well, it's it's like replacing a liquid chemical that people put on their land now. So we'd be replacing fish hydrolysis with an algae-based product.
Okay.
So
if we were to look at that and break that down into quarterly objectives, so that's the goal, right? Quarterly level projects. Where would you start with that?
A more concrete plan on what has to happen to get to it, because I'm the only one doing the planning right now, and I don't actually know all the steps that have to happen.
Yeah.
So,
So in a scenario like this, you have two different plans you're trying to make. You're making a product roadmap and you're making a
right,
business roadmap,
right.
right? The business roadmap is somewhat contingent on the product roadmap, and
Mm-hmm.
the product roadmap is somewhat contingent, but they're actually two different things,
Okay,
right? And
right.
so, which are you placing the priority on?
Let's go with the business roadmap.
Alrighty. So we can say for your quarterly level objective, I'm going to do it the way that Joe did it in the thing. No, I'm just going to say quarterly objective this way. Um, is to develop business plan
Yeah.
and timeline um, for implementation of that plan. Basically, when are you going to do what, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So do you think you can? Does that seem like a quarter-size project to you, or does that seem like a month-size based upon your time available?
It might be closer to a month size, but it might, I don't know.
All right. So whenever you don't know, jump up one higher level to quarterly objectives.
Okay.
Right. So if you think I'm not sure, give yourself more space and time, especially since this is a collaborative project. So it's not just your schedule; it's also your brother's schedule as well.
Right. Okay.
Alrighty. So we know that if you're developing the business plan in the timeline, we know probably in quarter two is where you start thinking about setting up the business entity so that you can start doing business as that, even if you're not doing that. Because to follow all the trademark patents and all that stuff, you're going to have a business entity.
We actually already have that.
So you've already done that. You got the S corp, you got all that filing and everything taken care of.
Yep.
Okay. So that's good. Um, when we look at it that way, if we were to really sequence this out and really plot it out, we know there are several things. You've got the legal structure, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think where this becomes super contingent, that there's another quarterly objective of actually figuring out, like, and defining what the product is and developing that product roadmap, because that will let you know when you can actually start building up the assets around that. Does that make
Right.
sense?
A defined product and initial marketing, like
Yeah.
market that we're trying to penetrate into.
Yeah. So define product and preliminary market.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's likely a quarterly level project as well.
I was actually thinking about that. My impulse was to say, "Oh, that's a month," but I think it's quarter.
Yeah. So define product and preliminary market. Then after that, what you would be doing as a quarterly level objective is starting to create the marketing and sales collateral for that market.
Right.
Right.
And then I can approach investors.
Yep. Create marketing and sales collateral. And then you can approach investors. And yes, that's a 3-month project as well.
Absolutely. I that one I know.
And so you can kind of see if we go there now. If we wanted to, we can go down one other level, but because you're at a level of really not, I won't say, what I want to say is inchoateness, that you can only plan to the level of detail that you can currently see, right?
Okay.
And so once you start develop this business plan, that's where when we start, like if we were, this would go on the quarterly objective planner. Excuse me.
Okay.
Ooh, bad language. Quarterly momentum planner. That's what I get for teaching this stuff for years. These types of things would go on those higher level planners, and then when you'd say, okay, for next month, I'm just going to focus on this one piece of that and get it done. And again,
Okay.
being under optimistic about what you can do, because what we end up seeing is that you will create. In our team, we call about the monthly or quarterly fall line, that there are certain projects we do not want to take to the next month with us because we don't want to see it show up on our plans, right? So
Okay.
it creates that pressure that's like, oh, we're shipping that. We're not crossing this. And we do that with the yearly too, right? So it's like, oh, we are not going into the next year with that project still on the board. So we're getting it done, right?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see that if you stall here with developing the business plan, and that takes you 4 or 5 months, then it's going to take you, then you're that much further, you're 2 months behind when it comes to creating the marketing collateral, right?
Okay.
And then then you get cumulatively behind and you feel frustrated, right? So that's kind of the name of the game there. Because it's easier, I think, in some ways for us to talk about, let's dive into this preliminary market and make some monthly objectives around that. So what would that look like for you?
We have to define. We know the product that we want to replace that's currently out in the market, and so we have to identify the parameters that other people are buying it, or the reasons that they're buying it, so that we can make sure we cover those, plus the advantages that we think we have.
All right, so we have survey, or I was going to say survey market research, but I know that means different things. But market research about current products.
Right.
That's a monthly long sort of thing. By the time you look at reviews, you look at specifications, so on and so forth. Right. What's next?
Then we have to take the product. During this time, we've got a scientist who's hoping to build the product. So I guess somewhere in there, my brother is going to be working on actually building the product. So once we have that, we have to define what it actually is as related to what we wanted it to be. Now we have to go articulate what it really is.
So we're going to define product.
Actual versus potential.
You have to define the actual product.
Yeah.
Yes, that's going to take a bunch of back and forth, right? Especially as what we tend to see is that products when way more complex than what they need to be, so it takes quite a while to get it down to a simpler product,
right?
And a simpler statement about that product. Okay, another monthly level project.
We have to figure out. We have a couple of markets in mind, and they are all very different in the way that they approach the Earth. So we would have to articulate 2 or 3 of our original initial customer approaches, so that somebody doesn't care about the science, but they want to not damage the Earth. That would be one group of people. Somebody else just needs better production numbers. That would be somebody else.
All right. So create customer profiles and pitches.
How about that? Identify customer pain points.
Yeah. ID customer pain points.
Yeah. That we would be addressing with our product, obviously.
Okay. And then you can actually separate it as another month once you've identified those to actually create the pitch that does that, or you can say that's one and the same thing. So, if
no,
you're
I think
doing
separate.
Yeah. So, create pitch. Right. So that already gets us into 4 months. So that's the thing that I wanted to slide in here real quick, Corinne, and I'm really appreciative for you sharing this. Is sometimes we have a quarterly level objective that just basically it extends, right? It's 2 quarters, but it's that big of a project, and we just say, you know what, there's the research and then there's the creation side of things, and those 2 things are tied together, and that's 6 months of the year. But looking at this defined product and preliminary market probably is going to be closer to 6 months.
Okay.
All things considered. But it might not. You might be able to get it in 4. It doesn't matter that much as long as you're thinking about how big of these projects are, going back to sort of, that chart that I showed of the pyramid of action perspectives, just looking at those quarterly projects are bigger than the monthly projects they contain.
Right.
Okay. And then if we wanted to, this is at the monthly level, we can go, I'm going the wrong way, I know, but still, we can go to weekly level projects of what you can do in, let's say, 6 hours a week on each one of those, and those become little chunks of those projects that you work on.
Okay.
And then we can go to the daily and say, okay, on Wednesday, I'm going to work on that because I have 2 hours Wednesday where I can do that.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how we work through there. And so, I'm just going to pull up the planners real quick. I'm doing this out of order, but it's going to be okay. Right. So let me There's the plan, and then what you end up deciding what to do, right? Okay, so can you guys see my? Can you see the planner? Okay. And so if we were to look at what you will accomplish this year, this is this first goal that we're talking about right here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see sort of the quarter 1 objectives where we can go 1, 2, 3, 4 that way. And
Mm-hmm.
this is just an area where you can make like a little mini Gantt chart, you know? So you can see like, wait a second, this one is it's gonna scroll over 1. That's if you're printing it out. Also, any other major events we can see there, but that's how that would work with just that one goal. Um, I recently recorded an anchor wave about the fact that having fewer goals actually means that we move faster than having multiple goals. But for this particular project, Corinne, we would also have to put the product roadmap on there, and we'd have to do basically something similar because we'd have to line up the product roadmap with the business roadmap.
Right.
Does it make
Except
sense?
for that only has me shepherding it, not me doing it, because I'm not going to be developing the product.
Yeah,
So I just
and so
shepherd.
yeah, I mean, you might not be doing the product, but in cases like what you're doing, what I've found is that most of the business planners actually end up shepherding the actual project or doing the project management for the products that are being created.
Right.
Because otherwise, the creative inventors just love to tinker, but not necessarily ship something to market.
Right.
And so breaking it down, like we would carry over that same goal here, right? So I'm just going to put develop a concrete product. Develop a concrete investor-ready product. So we would port that over, and in this quarter objective, why is it you can never spell when people are watching you? Don't know, right? We would put develop business plan.
Mm-hmm.
Biz plan plus timeline, right?
Right.
And then this is where we would use this one, Corinne, sorry. Corinne to work through like, okay, in January, I'm going to do this. A major objective would be, oh, I need to create this asset. I need to create that asset. That's what these little milestones are. Milestones are the things that you can see in advance, right? Whereas benchmarks are the things that happen because of something you've done that sometimes you don't necessarily get to see, right? So, an investor, like if you're making something, an investor shows up and is like, hey, I'm really interested in that. That's a benchmark, right? You couldn't necessarily plan that was going to happen, but it definitely shows that you're onto something.
Right.
Right. And so then we would go from there. So we have develop a concrete investor-ready product. We have developed the business plan and timeline, right? Now, granted, we would have filled out all the other ones too, but then we can scroll down and we can go to January. And what would we do? We would take that same plan that we just made and we make those same objectives that we just laid out, and then we start looking at how we're going to get those during the week.
Okay.
See how that works, Corinne?
That looks, yeah.
And then if you like really want to go this way, right? And the trick is always go to the level of detail that works that you need, that works for you.
Right.
Right? Then you can go to today's projects. And normally we'll do this one in the context of looking at the weekly planner, and you can just sit down and say, okay, here's what I'm working on today. I need to incorporate those other projects. Here's today's schedule, so on and so forth, right? So it all flows together, right? You're just chunking down to ever smaller time slices, and this is where sometimes people can get confused, Corinne, because it's like, well, they're trying to figure out what they're looking at the daily momentum planner and they're like, I don't really get what I'm trying to do. Well, actually, they probably need to be looking at the higher level above that, and if they still don't know, they need to go to the higher level above that and get back to something that looks like this. So when you're looking for context and you're looking at the reason why you're doing something, you always go up to a higher level planner.
Okay.
And when you're looking for detail, you go down a level. Was that helpful, Corinne?
Very.
Okay. I want you, do you have any questions for me?
No, I actually, it helped me. I can just see right down. I can see it in my head already. Thanks.
Good, good. That we win when we say I can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute now and pull Mallory on. I really appreciate you providing that project for me, Corinne.